Manchester United just played their best game of the season in what ended up as a disappointing result away at Selhurst Park against Crystal Palace. Even though this game ended up in a disappointing draw, United dominated the game on all fronts. And in this video, I'm going to take you through how Ten Hag set up the team in and out of possession in order to achieve this level of dominance. So let's start with out of possession. We've seen the 4-2-4 press a lot this season, but in this game, United set up in a 4-1-4-1. As we've seen throughout Ten Hag's tenure, he likes to adapt to the opposition, and Crystal Palace play a 3-4-3 or a 3-5-2 structure. So going with a 4-1-4-1 and a more man-to-man pressing system was the best way to nullify them. This is what ultimately made United so dominant. Everyone's pressing was really top and really organized, especially Joshua Zirkzee. You can see how much he has improved and how much he's really gelling with this new structure since his opening game against Fulham. He's been really good, and especially in this game, at locking off one side of the pitch, curving his runs when pressing, and limiting Crystal Palace to only playing on one side of the pitch. The structure really did its job, forcing Palace into long balls, which we would regain, or turnovers, which we would regain. This, in turn, helped us have way more of the ball and dominate possession. Now let's go to in possession. With the ball, United set up in a 3-4 build-up structure with Nusr Mazraoui, Licha, and De Ligt making up the back three, and Kobe with Dalot inverting next to him and Eriksen just slightly ahead of him. This really worked wonders because when Bruno would drop in, we would create a box midfield, which would overload the Crystal Palace 3 in midfield and create that numerical opposition that we were trying to garner. This left the 8 on the opposite side of the ball, whether that be Kobe or Bruno, wide open. If Palace tried to lock on, both 8s would be free and we would create a 4v2 in the midfield. At times, Eriksen would drop into what we like to call the Cruz zone, which is kind of that left half space area. This would attract Munoz to him and leave Garnacho 1v1 with Lacroix. It also helped attack the Palace's back 5 because we would create 2v2 situations when the 8s were a little bit wider. We also saw Dalot invert into the pivot a little bit more than we saw Christian Eriksen in the pivot, which I think is due to just if we lost the ball in the middle of the pitch, then we would have more legs there. As we've seen with Christian Eriksen, he's great in possession, but out of possession, he leaves a lot to be desired just due to his age and overall athletic ability. So everything I've said so far would lead you to believe that we won 5-6-0 and everything's great, right? No, obviously, we drew 0-0. Something changed. Something didn't go right. Obviously, we missed a lot of chances, which that just comes down to, players putting the ball in the back of the net. But also, once we saw Zirkzee come off, a lot of things changed. United lost a lot of that dominance that they had sustained over the course of the first 60 minutes of the game. But let's take a look into why that happened. Let's take a look at Crystal Palace. First of all, they took off Wharton and brought on Jefferson Lerma. He's a lot more athletic and a lot more defensively sound than Wharton. They also brought off Eddie Nketiah for Will Hughes, which was another substitution to really lock up that midfield and cut off a lot of the areas that Zirkzee was coming into. So against an already solid back 5, and they bring in 2 defensively sound midfielders, you need a player like Zirkzee to really help facilitate the play and try to break down that lower block. But instead of taking off Garnacho or Ahmad for Rashford, Ten Hag opted to take off Joshua Zirkzee and play Rashford in the 9. Now, even after scoring 2 goals against Barnsley in that position, we know Rashford is not at his best in that position, those central areas. He can oftentimes get lost in games, and he's definitely not the player that Joshua Zirkzee is in that position in terms of linking up play, getting his teammates involved, and creating dangerous situations. A lack of that presence in Zirkzee and replacing him with a player like Rashford and eventually Rasmus Højlund is just not what the game called for, and I think poor management from Ten Hag. So while this game showed a lot of positive signs, it was ultimately incredibly frustrating. A lot of big chances missed, which United are at the top with 17 big chances missed in the Premier League this season. Definitely should have taken home 3 points, but still a lot of encouraging signs. It's been a while since we've dominated a game to that standard, but these are the sort of games where United just have to win. You have to take home those 3 points, and you have to secure the victory if you want to be a serious team competing for Champions League this season.